Hello everyone. I welcome you all for today's lecture series on hydrology and irrigation engineering. In the previous lecture, we discussed about the hydrological cycle and different representation of a hydrological cycle. So we discussed about the qualitative representation and engineering representation of the hydrological cycle. So today we'll be discussing about the second module. Second module comprises of introduction to the evaporation, the process of evaporation, factors affecting evaporation, Dalton's law, measurement of evaporation, estimation, and reservoir evaporation and control. So these are the which will be covered in the evaporation topic. Next, in evapotranspiration topic, we'll be discussing about factors affecting evaporation, its measurement, and estimation by using Blenny-Cradle equation. And the third topic is infiltration, where again the factors affecting infiltration capacity, measurement by double ring infiltrometer, Halton's infiltration equation, and infiltration indices are the things which will be covered in the infiltration chapter. So before that, let me explain you how does the hydrological cycle takes place as we already discussed in the last class. So hydrology is nothing but it is the process where the water from the surface is going to evaporate and it is going to be accumulated in the form of clouds in the atmosphere. So when the due to attraction of the molecules, the diameter of the raindrop is going to increase and then it is going to fall in the form of a rainfall on the surface of the ground, or it is in the form of a precipitation. So when the rainfall reaches the earth surface, it comes in contact with the different parameters, like it will come in contact with the trees, it will come in contact with the buildings. So due to that, some quantity of rainfall is going to be lost there. So here the hydrological equation is given as runoff is equal to rainfall minus losses. Rainfall is nothing but it is the amount of water or a precipitation which is flowing on the surface of the ground. So this is the product of rainfall minus losses. So here the runoff from a watershed resulting due to the storm is dependent on the losses, and the losses may occur due to the following reasons. So the losses may be due to evaporation. So when the rainfall takes place, before reaching to the surface of the ground, if it comes in contact with the warm area, then the evaporation of water takes place there. So the evaporation of rainfall will takes place when the rainfall is in the atmosphere, like before reaching to the earth surface. Next comes the evapotranspiration. Evapotranspiration is nothing but it is the process where the water is absorbed by the plants and through leaves the water is going to be evaporated back to the atmosphere. So this process is called as a evapotranspiration. Okay, so here the plants are going to breathe. So that breathing process is called as a transpiration. Next comes the infiltration. So infiltration is nothing but it is also other loss, like when the rainfall reaches to the earth surface, some part of a liquid is going to percolate inside the ground and it is going to contribute to the groundwater. So this process is called as an infiltration. The infiltration takes place both in vertical and horizontal direction, vertical movement and horizontal movement of water. Then interceptions are nothing but it may be a mountain, it may be a building, it may be a tree, large tree. So this as an interception. So when the rainfall occurs on a mountain, so certain quantity of water will be storing on the surface of the mountain. Next, for example, trees. If the rainfall comes in contact with the larger trees, then the rainfall takes place on the leaves itself. If there is a dense forest where the rainfall takes place, then the water will be available on the surface of the leaves, and immediately it will evaporate back to the atmosphere. So these act as an interception. Next, watershed leakages. Watershed leakage is nothing but it is a area or a catchment area where the water is going to be stored. So due to the leakages, due to the cracks which are developed on the surface of these catchments or a watershed, so the leakage of water takes place, and it is also one of the losses. So these are the 5 reasons where the loss of rainfall takes place. So the first 3 contribute to the major losses, that is evaporation, evapotranspiration, and infiltration. So let us discuss the evaporation. Evaporation is nothing but it is the process by which a liquid changes to gaseous state at the free surface through transfer of heat energy. In an exposed water body like lakes or ponds, water molecules are in continuous motion with a range of velocities. So as the surface water, due to the heat energy when the solar radiation falls on the surface of the ground or a ground which consists of a water, then the evaporation of the molecules takes place, the evaporation of water takes place. So here additional heat on water body increases the velocity. When some water molecule possess sufficient kinetic energy, they may cross over the water surface. So as the temperature increases, the sufficient kinetic energy crosses, then the molecules will leave the water surface. Simultaneously, the water molecules in the atmosphere surrounding the water body may penetrate the water body due to condensation. So this process is called as a evaporation. So this is the detailed study of evaporation process, how exactly it takes place. So we know that external, that radiations supplied to the surface of a water body, the kinetic energy of water molecules will be increased. So here, out of total atmospheric pressure on the free surface, there will be some contribution from the vapor molecules present in the free surface. This partial pressure exerted by the vapor is called as a vapor pressure. So continued supply of heat energy causes accumulation of more and more vapor molecules, and thus gaseous medium can no longer accommodate and reject the vapor molecules in the form of a condensation. At the same rate of vaporization, so at this stage the air is set to saturate. So here evaporation occurs, it is necessary to have a supply of water, a source of heat, and vapor pressure deficit. So these are the 3 inputs, 3 ingredients we can say to evaporation. Okay, to happen evaporation. So these are the 3 important needs, that is supply of water, source of heat, and a vapor pressure deficit. So if these 3 are available, then only the evaporation takes place. Now here, let us discuss the factors affecting evaporation. So there are different factors are there which are going to affect the evaporation. That is vapor pressure differences. What is this vapor pressure differences? A number of molecules leaving or entering a water body depends on the vapor pressure of water body at the surface, and also the vapor pressure of the air. Higher water temperature leads to high at surface and increase rate of evaporation. High humidity in air tends to increase vapor pressure in air and in turn reduces rate of evaporation. So if the temperature of the water body, so the vapor pressure depends upon the temperature of the water body. If there is a sufficient temperature available in the water body, then only the vapor pressure takes place at the surface. Then temperature of air and water. The rate of emission of molecules from a water body is a function of its temperature. So the rate at which the molecule leave the water body and enters the atmosphere is due to the temperature. Okay. At higher temperature, molecules of water have a greater energy to escape. So as the temperature increases, evaporation rate will also increase. The maximum evaporation from the water bodies takes place in summer season rather than other seasons, because in summer season the temperature of the air and water is very high. So this helps in evaporation. So it is been estimated that for every 1 degree Celsius rise in atmospheric temperature increases 5 centimeter of evaporation annually. So 1 degree Celsius of rise in temperature will leads to 5 centimeter loss of like evaporation takes place annually. So this is the estimate. Wind velocity. It is the dry air which comes in contact with the water surface, so which is ready to absorb moisture content. So due to the wind velocity, the evaporation takes place, and due to wind velocity, this evaporated vapors are transferred from one place to another, so which depends upon the wind velocity. Say for example, if there are clouds, formation of clouds, then if suddenly wind velocity increases, then the cloud starts moving from one place to another place. Likewise, wind velocity is nothing but it is the one of the factor which is going to affect the evaporation. So it has been estimated that 10% increase in wind velocity increases 2 to 3% of evaporation. Next, it depends upon the quality of water evaporation. So there are different types of liquids are there, like saline water, viscous fluid, non-viscous fluids, and so on. So the rate of evaporation of a fresh water is greater than saline water here, because the surface water is available either in the river or in the oceans. So river is considered as a fresh water. So the evaporation of the fresh water is greater. The evaporation of the water in the river is greater than that of the ocean. Why? Because the ocean water constitutes many mineral components in it. Therefore, it requires more temperature to evaporate the water. It is established that saline water has less vapor pressure, and it is observed that evaporation from fresh water is 3 to 4% more than seawater. So, the evaporation from fresh water bodies, like it may be a lake, it may be a pond, it may be a river, so 3 to 4% more. Next, atmospheric pressure and altitude. Evaporation decreases with the increase in atmospheric pressure as the rate of diffusion from water body into the air is suppressed. So the atmosphere water, the air is compressed, compacted. So therefore, no evaporation takes place if the atmospheric pressure is greater or high. At a higher altitude, the atmospheric pressure is usually lesser, and thereby evaporation rate is higher. So on the one hand, if the atmospheric pressure is high, then there is no evaporation of water takes place. The evaporation takes place, but it is very less because the air is suppressed. At the higher altitude, there is the atmospheric pressure is lesser. So therefore, the evaporation rate is higher at the higher altitude. Next, depth of a water body. Evaporation shallow water bodies is greater than compared to deep water bodies, as the water at the lower level is deep in deep water bodies is not heated much, and vapor pressure at a lower level is also reduced. If the depth of the water body is greater than 3 meter, then we can say it is a deep water body. If it is less than 3 meter, then we are going to call it as a shallow water body. In case of a shallow water bodies, the heat is going to be present or stored at the bottom of the surface of the water bodies. Due to that, the evaporation rate increases in case of a shallow water bodies. Whereas in case of a deep water bodies, there is no heat, much heat available at the bottom. So therefore, the vapor pressure at the lower level is reduced. So depth of the water body is another parameter which is going to affect the evaporation. Next, let us discuss about the humidity. If the humidity of the atmosphere is more than evaporation, then evaporation will be less. So as the humidity increases, evaporation decreases. So less, because during the process of evaporation, water vapor moving from the point of higher moisture content to lower moisture content, and the rate of this movement is grounded by this difference of moisture content or a moisture gradient existing in air. Humidity is nothing but when the humidity increases, evaporation is going to be decreases, because the moisture content of the evaporation and the moisture content present in the air will be not the difference. There is a difference, so therefore the evaporation decreases as the humidity increases. Next parameter is radiation. Since the evaporation requires continuous supply of energy, which is derived mainly from solar radiation, the radiation will be a factor of considerable importance. Evaporation increases and the radiation increases, so it is vice versa. As the solar radiation increases, as the heat increases, evaporation increases, and it is vice versa. So these are the factors which are going to affect the evaporation. Next, let us discuss the Dalton's law of evaporation. The rate of evaporation is a function of the difference in vapor pressure at the water surface and the atmosphere. Dalton's law of evaporation states that evaporation is proportional to difference in vapor pressure of water and air. So here evaporation is proportional to the difference in vapor pressure and difference vapor pressure of evaporation of water minus evaporation of air, or it can also written as E is equal to K into evaporation of water pressure minus evaporation of air pressure, where E is nothing but it is the daily evaporation, EW, that is saturated vapor pressure of water at a given temperature, EA is the vapor pressure of air, and K is the constant of proportionality. So considering the effect of wind, Dalton's law is expressed as E is equal to K raised to 1 EW minus EA and A plus B into V, where V is the wind velocity in kilometer per hour. A and B are the constant. K, A and B are the constant for a given area. So by this equation, we can calculate by using Dalton's law. Next, measurement of evaporation. Evaporation is measured by using different methods, that is by using pan measurement method, use of empirical formula, storage equation, and energy budget equation. Okay, so these are the methods by which we can identify the evaporation. Now first let us discuss about a pan evaporation method. In case of a pan measurement method, it consists of an iron cylinder, galvanized iron cylindrical vessel of 1.2 meter to 1.8 meter diameter. So here you can see this is the galvanized iron vessel, so which is 1.2 meter to 1.8 meter diameter and it is 300 mm deep or a depth. So it consists of an opening at a top which can be used as a evaporometer or evaporation pan. So here during an interval of a time, evaporation is measured as the drop in the water level in the pan. The best example is take some quantity of water in a bowl and keep it outside. So initially mark the level of the water which is available in the bowl, and after you can see there is a drop of water level takes place when you are going to keep it in the atmosphere. So due to evaporation, what happens? The water will be evaporated into the atmosphere. So that will give the initial water level and the final water level will give you the evaporation rate. Here, rainfall data, atmospheric pressure data, temperature, etc. should be recorded. So here, in this case, rainfall data is very much necessary. So you are going to calculate or you are going to estimate the evaporation for a different years. Next, atmospheric pressure data is also required to check whether the atmosphere contains humidity and so on. Next, temperature. So you have to record the temperature because as the temperature increases, the evaporation is going to increase. And this is correlated. That is, evaporation from a pan is not exactly the same as that taking place from the water body. Why? Because here we are going to take a small pan which is 300 mm deep and 1.2 to 1.8 meter in diameter. So it is very small. It just what you can say, it is just a model, but it is not resembles the property of a water bodies, because water bodies may be deep, it may be a shallow, because the bottom of the water body is not constant, it is having some undulations. So therefore the evaporation by pan is not exactly same as that of a water bodies. Hence, while using a pan measurement data for measuring evaporation from a lake or a water body, a correction factor has to be applied or multiplied by a pan coefficient. That is, whenever you are going to measure the pan reading, so you should multiply it by some pan coefficient. So that pan coefficient is nothing but it is the actual evaporation from the reservoir divided by measured evaporation from the pan. Suppose if you wanted to identify the evaporation, then the measured evaporation from the pan will be already available. With that, you need to collect the information of actual evaporation from the reservoir. Okay, if you take the rate of this, then that value will become pan coefficient. Then evaporation pans adopted in practice have a pan coefficient of 0.7 to 0.8. So this pan coefficient generally lies between 0.7. Popular evaporators are ISI standard, or it is also called as a class A pan. Next, US class A pan, Colorado sunken pan, and last is USGS, that is United States Geological Survey floating pan. So these are the different pans which is used to measure the evaporation. So this is a schematic representation of a ISI standard pan. So the evaporation pan should conform ISI 5973 to 1976. So these are the standards recommended for a pan evaporation. Therefore, it is also called as a class. It consists of 220 mm effective diameter. So almost all the pans looks similar, but thing is that the specifications are going to change. So here you can see the diameter is 1220 mm effective diameter and 255 mm effective depth, and wall thickness is 0.9 mm. So this is the wall thickness which is of a 0.9 mm thickness, and it is made up of a copper sheet. A wire mesh covered with the hexagonal openings is provided at the top of the circular disc. So this is nothing but the circular disc. Over that you can see a mesh is provided. This mesh is usually provided in order to prevent the dust and debris which will be fall inside this pan. Okay, so to protect, we are going to cover it by a mesh. A fixed gauge housed in a stilling well as shown in the figure is provided. So during evaporation measurement, a constant water level is maintained at the top of the level of the gauge fixed. For this purpose, water has to be added or removed periodically. The water level measurements are done using micrometer hook gauge. So this is a hook gauge which is provided. So which will show you the temperature of the water. So here you can see a thermometer is fixed and this is a clamp. So by which you'll come to know what is the temperature of the water which is present in the pan. Apart from that, here there will be a gauge which is called as a fixed point gauge, and there is a stilling well is provided. A small well is provided here. This well is provided inside a fixed gauge is connected. So this fixed gauge will be having certain readings. When the water falls inside this, the reading will be known. Automatically, the temperature will be also noted. So for this purpose, water has to be added or removed periodically. The water level measurement are done using micrometer hook gauge. The entire assembly is mounted on a wooden platform. So here you can see this is the wooden platform. On this entire setup is fixed. Next, pan coefficient. Evaporation pans are not exact models of a large reservoirs or lakes. Because of exposure conditions which are not identical in both the cases, especially the heat storing capacity and heat transferred from side and bottom of the pan are quite different from those of the large lakes or reservoirs. So here the pan coefficient is not constant. It is just a value which you are going to obtain. It is not exactly similar to the large reservoirs or a lake. So also the height of the rim above the water surface in the pan affect the wind action over the surface and creates a shadow of a variable magnitude over a water surface which affect the radiation incident to the water surface. So if you are going to provide it at a certain height, then what happens? The surface act as a shadow. So due to this shadow, the radiations will be trapped and no evaporation takes place. So here the coefficient called pan coefficient is introduced by giving the equation. So this is the pan coefficient which is written as a Cp, which is actual evaporation from the lakes or reservoirs divided by measured evaporation from the pans. So this is the ratio which will give you the pan coefficient. So there are different types of pans are there, ISI pans. So here the pan coefficient lies between 0.65 to 1 and average pan coefficient is 0.8. For class A load pan, so this is the value and the average coefficient of pan is 0.7. So this is for a Colorado sunken pan and floating pan. So these are the different pans and these are the range of a pan coefficient. Next, using the empirical formula, you can identify the evaporation rate. So based on the Dalton's law of evaporation, various formula has been suggested to estimate evaporation. First one is Mayer's formula. So this equation is nothing but it is the Mayer's formula by which we can identify the evaporation. So the equation is the product of C into ES minus EA, where ES is nothing but it is the saturation vapor pressure at the water surface. It is calculated in terms of a millimeter of mercury, and EA is nothing but it is the actual vapor pressure of air based on mean monthly temperature and relative humidity. It is multiplied by 1 plus 0.06215 V, where V is nothing but it is the wind velocity in kilometer per hour. So 10 meter above the ground. The wind velocity is going to change for every 10 meter above the ground. C is nothing but it is the value which is equal to 50 for small shadow ponds and 11 for large or deep water bodies. By using this equation, you can easily identify the evaporation. So this is the rover's formula. The second formula to identify or to calculate the evaporation, so which is taken as 0.771 into 1.465 minus 0.000732 Pa, where Pa is nothing but it is the barometric reading in mm of mercury, that is pressure of the air, multiplied by 0.44 plus 0.7334 V, where V is the wind velocity, into Es minus Ea. So this equation will give you the value of evaporation by using Rover's formula. Next, how to control evaporation from the lakes. So there are some following recommendations or measures to be used to reduce the evaporation from the water surfaces. Yes, my voice is audible to you all? Akshata Hotkar? Akshata Hotkar? Sohan?
Yes, ma'am.
My voice is audible to you all?
Yes, ma'am.
So next, we'll be discussing what are the measures to be taken to control the evaporation from the lakes. Storage reservoirs should have more depth and less surface area. So any water body, it should have less surface area and more depth. Then only the evaporation rate can be reduced. The site for construction of a dam should be chosen that deep reservoir with a minimum surface area exposed to the atmosphere is formed. So the area, the catchment area should be less and the depth should be greater. If the depth is greater and the surface area is lesser, then the evaporation reduced. So for a reservoir, you might have seen the catchment area, the availability of the water at the upstream side. So the area is generally maintained very less, but the depth of the reservoir are kept larger. So this will help to reduce the evaporation. Next, tall trees on the windward side of the reservoir should be planted so that they act as a wind breakers. Usually you might have seen some trees are going to be planted surrounding to this catchment area. This is because this long trees helps in breaking the wind velocity. If any wind which is in direction, okay, then this particular trees will help to break this wind. It acts as an obstruction because from this surface the evaporation will be taking place. As the wind velocity increases, the evaporated water vapors are transferred from one place to another. Okay, so therefore what happens, the catchment area where the evaporation takes place, the rainfall will not occur at that particular area. Indeed, the vapors are transferred from one place to another place. Next, by spraying a chemical such as acetyl alcohol on water surface, a film of 0.15 micron thickness is produced on the surface. This film allows precipitation in but does not allow evaporation. This is suitable when wind velocity are less and for a small and medium sized reservoir. So nowadays there is a latest technology is there where they are going to add some chemical inside the water bodies. This chemical act as a thin film. Okay, so it act as a thin film on the surface of the water body. Okay, so due to that no evaporation takes place, but the rainfall can easily contribute to this water body. So This particular chemical is named as acetyl alcohol. Okay, so whenever you are going to use this acetyl alcohol, it is having a thin film of 0.15 micron. Okay, so you might have seen in the places where in colder places, you might have seen the water body, the liquid will be at the bottom of the water body, whereas the surface of the water will be turned into ice sheet. I think you might have seen in the colder places like Himalaya and all, the water bodies, initially it consists of a water. As the temperature reduces to -4 degrees Celsius, then you can see this water body where on this surface of the water body, a thin sheet of ice is generated. Okay, similarly, this chemical, that is acetyl alcohol, is also like a thin film which is formed on the surface of the water. So the chemical which we are going to use, it should not affect the aquatic life which is present inside the water. Apart from that, the water is used for various purposes, for domestic purpose. So it should not affect the human life and as well as the aquatic life. But there is a one disadvantage of this method. If this particular chemical is used in a moving water bodies, okay, sometimes what happens, for example, let me take this water body. If the water level exceeds this particular level, when the water completely fills, then there may be chances of water which is get overflowing. So when the water overflows, with this water which is overflowing, the chemical will be also transferred. Okay, the chemical layer will be also removed. This is the one of the drawback of using this acetyl alcohol. Next, in case of ponds and lakes, entire water body can be covered by thin polythene sheets as mechanical covering. So wherever there is a scarcity of water, the ponds and lakes are covered with a thin polythene sheets for a mechanical covering. But one of the drawback of this particular method is no oxygen is supplied for the aquatic life. Next, in reservoirs, outlet arrangements should be so done to let out warmer water at the top than colder water from the bottom. So the reservoir should be arranged in such a way that the warmer water should be at the top and the colder water body at the bottom. Next, deep weeding the reservoir should be done such that water consumed by weeds is reduced. Next, the streams and channels to be straight so that length in turn exposed area to atmosphere are reduced. So as much as possible, we are going to reduce the length of the channel, because as the length increases, the evaporation also increases. So therefore, we are going to select such a distance. We are going to provide a length of the channel in such a way that the evaporation of the water should be less and storage of water should be more. So the next topic is evapotranspiration. Evapotranspiration, that is in agricultural field, apart from transpiration, water is also lost due to evaporation from adjacent soils. The sum of these two losses is often termed as evapotranspiration or a consumptive use. So here three definitions are there. One is evapotranspiration, potential evapotranspiration, and actual evapotranspiration. So the potential evapotranspiration is also written as PET, that is potential evapotranspiration. When sufficient moisture is freely available to completely meet the needs of vegetation fully covering an area, the resulting evapotranspiration is called as a potential evapotranspiration. So when the sufficient moisture is available in the atmosphere, for vegetation fully covering an area. Okay, suppose think that there is a vegetative plants. If that particular area is fully enclosed by moisture, then that particular the evaporation which takes place at this particular area is called as a potential evapotranspiration. Next, actual evapotranspiration. The real evapotranspiration occurring in a specific situation in the field is called as a actual evapotranspiration. The knowledge of evapotranspiration, potential evapotranspiration, and actual evapotranspiration are very much useful in designing irrigation systems. So, actual evapotranspiration is nothing but it is the real evapotranspiration which is going to occur at a particular field. So these data are very much necessary while designing the irrigation systems. Next, factors affecting evapotranspiration. Potential evapotranspiration is controlled by meteorological factors like actual evapotranspiration is affected by plants and soil factors. So here these are the some of the parameters which is going to affect the evapotranspiration. First is temperature. As the temperature increases, the evaporation from the stomata, okay, you might have seen the stomata which will be available on the surface of the leaf. Early in the morning, you can see small droplets on the surface of the leaves. So these are the droplets. When the plant breathe, it is going to remove some quantity of water through the stomata. If the temperature is high, then the evaporation from these plants will increase. Next comes the humidity, then percentage sunshine hours, wind speed, type of crop, season, moisture holding capacity of soil, irrigation methods, and cropping pattern. So these are the different methods which are going to affect the evapotranspiration. Next, determination of evapotranspiration or consumptive use of water. So many times in the examination, they are going to ask you what is the consumptive use of water. So consumptive use of water is nothing but it is the evapotranspiration. So the time interval for supplying water to the agricultural crop is a factor dependent on the water requirement of the crops, soil properties, and as well as consumptive use. So here there are two methods by which we can identify the evapotranspiration. One is direct measurement and second one is by using the empirical formula. In direct method, we can measure it by using soil moisture studies on plots, tank and lysimeter, field experimental plots, integration method, inflow and outflow studies of large areas. So these are the different methods. Soil moisture studies on plots. So this is done before and after supplying the water. The quantity of water extracted per day from the soil is computed from each required period. A curve is drawn by plotting the rate of water consumed. So here it consists of a pan where it is filled with the soil. If there is a sufficient moisture content in the soil, then there is no as the temperature increases, the evaporation of the moisture content takes place. You might have seen in summer season, even though if you not pour the water to the plants, then also the plant are going to be in a rigid condition. They are going to reach the rigidity. Why? Because there is some quantity of moisture which is available at the bottom of the soil. So it is going to absorb all the moisture content from the soil whenever you are not going to provide or pour water to the plants. So here we are going to observe the extracted data by the soil and we are going to plot the curve which will give you the consumption of daily and monthly basis. Evaporation, that is consumption daily and monthly basis. Next, tank and lysimeter method. Tanks are watertight cylindrical containers which are open at one end. They have a diameter of 1 to 3 meter and a depth of 2 to 3 meter. They are set in ground with the rim in flush with the groundwater. So the quantity of water to keep a constant moisture content is determined. So here a lysimeter is a container similar to the tank but has a previous bottom free drainage. Through the bottom is collected in a pan which is kept below. So these are the field experimental plots. And this is the integration method, that is consumptive use of each crop and its area, consumptive use of natural vegetation, and evaporation from water surfaces, and evaporation from open lands. So these are comes under integration method. Next is inflow and outflow studies for larger areas, where the consumptive use is identified by taking P plus GS minus GE minus O, where I is nothing but it is the total inflow into the area, P is the total precipitation occurring, plus GS is groundwater storage at the beginning of the year, GE is the groundwater storage at the end of the year, and O is the outflow from the area during the year. By this equation, you can also identify the evapotranspiration. And these are the few empirical formulas which are very helpful to identify the evapotranspiration, that is Blenny-Criddle method, Penman method, Lowry and Johnson method, and Hargreaves-Pan method. So these are the four methods by which we can identify the evapotranspiration. So the Blenny-Criddle equation is given as F equal to P into Tm divided by 100, where Tm is nothing but it is the mean monthly temperature. Okay, monthly mean temperature. Okay, which is in case of in terms of a degree Fahrenheit. P is the monthly daylight hour expressed in terms of a percentage of daylight hours of the year, and F is in terms of inches. So this expression will help you to identify the evapotranspiration. And next comes the infiltration.